Hello guys, welcome to your own channel Chess Radio Kolkata. Now that is the third game from Mikhail saga. Mikhail from Latvia playing with the white pieces against Zilber with the black pieces. The game was played in Riga 1949. So the game was starting from e4, e6, d4, d5. Yes, the French defense. Now knight d2, c5, into d5, queen into d5. Now knight g2 f3. But at this position also you can see the d into c5. After that the variation continues like bishop into c5, knight g2 f3, knight f6, bishop d3, short castle, queen e2, knight b2 d7, knight e4, b6. Or instead of b6 you can also see bishop e7. Now the variation goes like short castle, b6, now c4, queen c6, knight d4, or at this position you can see the initiative with knight into c5. So the game is continuing like bishop g5, bishop b7, knight into f6 check, knight into f6, bishop into x6, g into f6. Now after that also you should go for the long castle, because after any casual moves you can see the threat of bishop captures king, the discover check, and after recapture the queen is lost. So at this position you can also see queen into c5. Now bishop e3, queen c7, bishop d4, bishop b7, long castle, knight c5, bishop e5, knight into d3 check, rook into d3, and rook into c4. The game was lately played in 1992. Kasparov playing with the white pieces versus the great Indian player Vishwanathan Anand in Reggio Emilia. Okay, so now just back to our game. Like after knight g5 we are just discuss about the d cross e5. So instead of we are going to look for the knight that is actual playing in the game. Now knight c6. Now here you can see a lot of options, first of all you can consider c into d4. Now after that it's bishop c4, queen d6, short castle, knight f6, knight b3, knight c6, knight b into d4, knight into d4, knight into d4, a6. Now can you guess the move here guys? Yes, the move is b3, queen c7, bishop b2, bishop d6, ace 3, and short castle. So that is also being played a game from 1992. The game was played Trivikov with the white pieces versus Drev, and the game was played in Podolsk. Now back to this position. Here white plays c4. Now queen h5. Now here you can see the alternative, like queen d8, like d into c5, bishop into c5. Now developing the bishop, queen e2, queen c7, knight e4, bishop e7, short castle, knight f6, rook d1, short castle, and bishop g5. That is a part of the game was played in 1961. 11 Aronian versus Matsukevich. Aronian played with the white pieces in the USSR Championship 1961. Now at this position you can see the alternative like queen h5 and queen d5. Now let's see queen h5, because that is actually played in the game. Now d into c5, bishop into c5, knight e4, knight g2 into c7, bishop g5, queen g4, queen d3, b6. Now here you can see the alternative, like after queen d3 you can play knight b4. And queen e2. Okay, but at our game after queen d3 it's b6 and long castle. Now here something is to discuss, that at this position h3, yes, h3 have the 3 variations, 2 with the queen f5, like queen f5, g4, queen g6, knight h4, knight e5, bishop b5, check. Or from the similar position with queen f5, g4, queen g6, knight h4, e5, queen e2.
Why haven't you learned anything?
And the third alternative from the h3 is queen into g2. Now here you can see that is rook h2 was considering to be trapping the queen, but at the game at this position, like just from that position, white just castled alongside castle. Now short side castle, although you can see the option like h6, but here is the short side castle. Now bishop f6, although you can play h3 now as well, but after bishop f6, sorry, yes, after bishop f6, that is queen f4, check, king b1, g into f6, now g3, queen h6, g4, queen f4, or you can see queen, king h8 and h4. But at this position, like after g4 there is queen f4, and now g5 and f into g5. Now here also considering f5 followed by knight f6 check, king h8, knight h5, queen c7, queen c3 check, e5. But at the game, after f into g5, that is knight f into g5, with the idea of knight f6, knight g6, h4 and b4. Yeah, let me show you. Yes, at this position you can also see h4 and knight b4 ideas. Or at this position you can see knight c2 e5, now queen c3, h6, h5, 8 into g5, 8 into g6, queen into e4, now queen h3, queen h4, queen g2. Or from this similar position you also followed like queen c3 and f6. But at the game, after knight b4, that is queen h3, like I am going to show you again, that is after this position, that is knight g6, h4, knight b4 and queen h3. Now you can play e5 or knight e5, but here the game plays e5 and now queen g2, bishop f5, although you can consider king h8 followed by h5, knight h4, rook into h4, queen into h4, rook d8, bishop e6, rook into a8, rook into c4. Or you can play rook into a8, like bishop into e6, rook f8, knight f7 check, rook into f7, rook into f7, king d8, king g4. Although you can see from this position, like after this position you can also see knight into c5 followed by rook into a8, or bishop into a2 check, and after king a1 simply knight into c2 check. Now you can see king has to capture, king into a2, now queen c4 check, king b1, that should be considerable. Or at this position you can see queen into a8 check, king g7, knight d7, king h6, knight into f6 check, bishop into f7, queen f8 check. Okay, now back to the initial position, like after queen h3, at this position it is e5, queen g2, bishop f5. So here you can see the alternative like king h8. The game should be followed like knight into f7 check, rook into f7, bishop into f7, bishop b7. or you can play queen into f7 and knight e5. Or you can also try bishop into g6, 8 into g6, rook h to e1. Okay, but at the game, after bishop f5, Tal played h5 and king g7. Now here is the alternative, like bishop into e4, now knight into e4, king g7, h into g6, h into g6, rook d7, queen f5, bishop e6, queen into e6, rook h7 check, king into h7, or you maybe play king g8 like queen h2. So after king h7, you can see knight g5 check, and after king h6, knight into e6 and f into a6. Okay, so just back to our game. Now after h5, opponent plays rook g7 and Tal replied with h into g7. Yes, now h6, bishop into f7 with the idea of rook h6, so let me show you, like at this position. Yeah, let me show you from this perspective, like after h6, bishop f7, you can see rook into f7, or you can play queen g4, now queen h2, or at this position you can play knight into c2, now rook into h6, now king into c2, queen into g5, or knight a3 check, b into a3, bishop into e4 check, knight into e4, queen into h6, rook h1. So lot of things can be happen. So at this position, Tal played g into f7, now h into g5, knight into g5, queen into f2, knight e6 check. Although that is, you can see here you have like queen a8, and after queen c2 check, queen into c2 check, king a1 and queen b1 check, rook into b1 and knight c2. That is the checkmate, the smother mate from black. So be careful for that. So after queen into f2 and knight e6, black could play king into f7, now queen into g7 check, king into e6, rook h6 check, bishop g6, now king into g6 check, king e7, rook h7 check, king f8, queen g7 check, king e8, queen d7 check, king f8, and rook 8 h8, the checkmate. Mikhail Tal won the game within 30 moves. What an amazing game, guys. Let's see the game once again with the engine analysis. Now e4, e6, Tal replied with d4, d5, the French defense. Now knight d2, c5, e into d5, queen into d5, knight g to f3, knight c6, bishop c4, queen h5, d into c5, bishop into c5, knight e4, knight g to e7, bishop g5, queen g4, queen d3, b6, long castle, short castle, bishop f6, queen f4 check, king b1, g into f6, g3, queen a6, g4, queen f4, g5, f into g5, knight f into g5, knight g6, h4, knight b4, queen h3, e5, queen g2, bishop f5, h5, king g7, h into g6, h6, bishop into f7, rook into f7, g into f7, h into g5, knight into g5, queen into f2, knight e6 check, king into f7, queen into g6, king into e6, rook into h6 check, bishop g6, queen into g6 check, king e7, rook h7 check, king f8, queen g7 check, king e8, queen d7 check, king f8, and rook h8. That is the checkmate. So till the end, Mikhail Tal won the game within 30 moves. Now here is some engine recommended. So I will mention you that after e4, e6, d4, d5, knight d2, e into d5, c5, e into d5, queen into d5, knight g to f3, knight c6, bishop c4, queen h5, d into c5, bishop into c5, knight e4, knight g to e7, bishop g5, queen g4, queen d3, b6. Now at this position you can see h6, like after bishop d2, that is bishop b4 and short castle could be followed. But at the game, that is b6, and after long castle, short castle, you can see here computer is suggesting f6, like h3 and queen f5, g4. But at the game, after long castle, short castle and f6, you can also try the alternative like h3 from here, like queen f7, g4 and knight e5. Try the h3 variation, guys. Now queen f4 check, king b1, g into f6, g3, queen h6, g4, queen f4, g5, f into g5, f into g5, knight g6, h4, or you can see rook h to g1, h6, knight h3, queen into h2, or from here you can see knight b4, queen h3, e5, or like bishop d7, f3, knight e5, bishop e2, this kind of scenario. After queen g2, bishop f7. So bishop e7 and knight into f7, bishop a6 and h5 could be a good game. But after queen g2, that is bishop f5, now h5 and king g7. Here computer is suggesting bishop e7, and after h into g6, bishop into g6 and knight h7. But although in the game, that is king g7 and h into g6, h6, bishop into f7, rook into f7, g into f7, h into g5, knight into g5, and here the black plays queen f2. But here knight c2 should be considerable, and after rook h7 check, bishop into h7, and after knight h7 check, the discover check from the queen. You can see a lot of options like this. But after knight into g5 and queen f2, the game is finished within 5 moves, because Mikhail played knight e6 check, king f7, queen g7 check, king into e6, rook h6 check, bishop g6, queen into g6 check, king e7, rook h7 check, king f8, queen g7 check, king e8, queen d7 check, king f8 and rook h8 checkmate. So thanks for watching the game. I understand that the video is too much longer for you, but feel free to comment, please subscribe, and see you soon.